Ross Jack, Coca-Cola 600 back for Junior Motorsports this weekend in the Xfinity Series, chasing his first win in the 9 car. Hi, everybody. I'm Dylan Welch, along with Parker Kligerman. Nice of you to pop in today. Yeah, welcome.
How you doing?
Good.
Thanks for having me up here.
Yeah, of course. So this place gets labeled as an intermediate track, but that's kind of where the comparisons stop. It's a really unique racetrack.
Well, you mentioned super speedway in the name. This is nothing of the sort. 1.3 miles. It races more like a short track in many respects. The amount of brake pressure you use in turn 1 is almost 50% of the max braking power you have in these race cars. Teams have been tricked before by taking intermediate brakes here, and then you have no brakes in the race. This is an incredibly difficult track that's definitely more like a short track than a speedway.
We saw Ross Chastain there coming on air, and of course he's in the 9 car that you see here on screen. This is a guy who won last weekend in NASCAR's, one of NASCAR's biggest races, has won here before in the Cup Series, but he wants to win an Xfinity race in this car pretty badly.
He does. When he first got this car earlier this year at COTA, I remember talking to him about this, and he said 2 things to me. He said, Parker, I've wanted to drive for Junior Motorsports in the Xfinity Series for years. I'm so glad this came together, and I also desperately want to win in a Junior Motorsports car. And then you have the confidence of what he did last week to win one of the crown jewels in NASCAR in the fashion that he did, running down that 24 car, making a late pass, a really epic pass in a lot of respects down at 1 and 2. Classic Chastain, sort of quick clearing himself right in front of the 24 and runs away with it. A gritty win. What? And I think, that's to me the mark of Ross Chastain. That grit, that chip on your shoulder, that determination to just find a way to win. That level of confidence, too, hopping this Xfinity car, that's going to be dangerous for everyone else.
That's what I was going to say. Different car, different series, but you win a race, any race in the Cup Series, but especially one of that caliber. It's got to be big just for your confidence, no matter what you drive.
Oh, right. And I think, Trackhouse, if we talk about the Cup Series just quickly for a second, we're looking at Taylor Gray here making the first laps on the track. That organization has maybe not been where they wanted to be the first portion of this season, the last couple of months, and then go win a crown jewel like that in the fashion he did. That drives confidence in the whole organization. And for Ross, he knows, a lot of respects, he helped that organization get back into victory lane when they've had some tougher times earlier this year. And so I know he loves to race. He's here in the Xfinity Series because he loves to race, but when you're winning the top of the game, there's nothing that provides confidence quite like that.
Group 1 on the racetrack for their 25-minute practice session. Getting a look at Taylor Gray.
Sammy Smith just got very loose down there in 1 and 2 as he caught Taylor Gray, and that's going to be something you see throughout today, is this difference in the 2 ends of this racetrack. 1 and 2, you use a lot of brake. It's almost hard to get the car to turn through the center. You don't want to quite get down that yellow line in 1 and 2. You want to be maybe a foot to 2 feet above it, so it's an awkward placement on the racetrack. And where you place that left front, if you miss it by an inch or 2 inches, you'll have a completely different experience through that corner as you watch him there go a little higher than Taylor Gray, and that's the perfect line. But you got to get that car to turn 1 and 2. If you do, you're most likely, as they head down to 3 and 4, going to be very loose. And especially on entry, this place, for whatever reason, down into 3, the car will just be the most uncomfortable race car you've ever experienced. As we go on board Ross Chastain here, you see that slow move of the wheels. He's running a little bit higher. That's because you just guard that right rear tire through the entry portion, and then you lean on the right rear and exit. It always gets loose. So you have that juxtaposition between the 2 ends, and you just have to sort of find that balance between the 2 that gives you a fast race car over a whole lap.
As he works through 1 and 2 right now, there's a little bit of a discoloration in the concrete in 3 and 4, where there's a big bump when you go over that really can kind of upset the balance of the race car. So we may see some guys start to search around for different lines. That pad right there.
Yep, the car hops.
Move. Yep. So that's going to be something to watch throughout the day here as we get more rubber laid down on the racetrack. Did have a Truck Series race last night, but plenty of on-track action today as well to lay some rubber down. So we get a look at Kyle Sieg.
Yeah, and just to go further on that bump down there, that's exactly where you start to apply the throttle. So you are starting to feed throttle to the car. You're leaning on the right rear tire with the shape of that corner. It starts to gain a little banking, but then you hit that massive bump, and it just always unsettles the race car. And the great race cars here can sometimes absorb that bump really well. Bad ones you'll see have massive moments to that corner. People will get very loose if they're inside of someone. So it's just a really tough part of what makes this racetrack difficult. I think this is possibly one of the most difficult racetracks possibly in NASCAR, and just how finicky it is, how disciplined you have to be with where you place your race car, how it wants to almost entice you to go faster in the corner than you should, and then you get to the center and you go, oh, wait a second, I've gone way too fast. So it's just a really difficult place, and that bump, that's good.
Carla Metz is downstairs covering all the stories in the pit lane this afternoon. Hi, Carla.
Hey, Dylan, and yeah, it is a little cooler here than it typically is on a Saturday in Nashville for the Xfinity Series. You add that element along with the fact that this is a night race tonight. I was talking to Justin Allgaier about that. He said, yeah, it's super weird that it's not going to be 5 billion degrees for this race. I said, how do you prepare for that? And he said, well, honestly, whatever you start with, if you're really loose in practice, expect to be extra loose during the race. If you're really tight, then be extra tight in the race. He also reminded me, too, that the resin that they're laying down, a lot different than PJ1 that we've seen in the past this season. He said it's going to spread out, but whatever we start with at the beginning of this race is not going to be what we're going to end with.
Yeah, exactly right. Practicing during the day, too, so conditions going to be a little bit different by the time they get back on the racetrack tonight. And Carla mentioned that resin. That's been sprayed all the way across the racetrack from the apron to the safer barriers. So if you need to move around, as we talked about, in theory, there should be some grip for you no matter where you go.
And Carla brought up a great point, which is all these teams are always trying to figure out that change from when you practice to what you'll actually have in the race, especially when you practice in a day like this and then you race basically at night. And everyone has different theories. There's some who say, oh, the front end will gain grip and it will get looser, or, you know, there's a theory like Taylor Gray had, which is that whatever you have just gets worse. I'm one of those drivers that believes that's kind of the way it happens, which is you gain grip, so whatever you're fighting is just going to be worse because you're probably going faster and you have a little bit more grip. And so the car, it's going to expose those flaws even further than what you had in the daytime as opposed to the high grip at night. Does the concrete surface generally react in a similar fashion to the traditional asphalt surfaces in that regard? No, that's what makes it tricky as well. it doesn't get as affected as heat by heat, some feel, you know, just because it's not that dark color of a normal asphalt, therefore it doesn't get as much heat, you know, baked into it from the sun. But what you'll see here as we start to run around is that rubber will lay into the racetrack and will start to get darker and darker in the corners. And then you get in the caution and we pick all that rubber up and it gets right back to being, you know, brilliantly white, and then we lay all that rubber down again and it gets real dark. So it's constantly changing at concrete tracks as opposed to asphalt tracks.
Rolling along in practice here at Nashville for the NASCAR Xfinity Series. Kyle Sieg leading the way right now. So much to do here in the Music City. Got Broadway, plenty of bars and things to do, but racetrack, always a great spot to check out as well.
be disciplined with yourself to make sure that you do it correctly.
Here's Katherine Legge back with Jordan Anderson racing for another start, her 5th of 7 scheduled Xfinity starts. I thought it was interesting. I was talking with Jordan yesterday about Katherine, and he made an interesting point. Crew chief Bruce Schlicker is on this car, was Shane Van Gisbergen's crew chief last year. Obviously, he and Katherine come from similar backgrounds, and Jordan said their feedback and how they refer to understeer and oversteer is something that's obviously not used to or not familiar to the NASCAR garage maybe, but Bruce, having worked with SVG last year, now Katherine this year, that's an instant crossover as far as feedback goes, and helps them kind of get Katherine into the ballpark of where she wants with the race car. So that kind of stuff all matters, right? When you're learning this car and learning this series, completely new to Katherine, and having a crew chief that can help you break things down a little easier is a big help. And
add a third driver in that mix that Bruce has worked with, AJ Allmendinger,
right,
who obviously comes from the open wheel world as well, right? Now a little bit more ingrained in NASCAR by the time he worked with Bruce, but they won a lot of races together, so he's had a lot of experience of drivers who have had success elsewhere and coming in to try to learn stock cars, and that's really key because, we've talked about what Katherine's undertaking here, especially with some of the tracks that she's chosen to come to. These are difficult racetracks. She's kind of been thrown to the wolves in some respects, but I really respect her determination and how she seemingly just continues to improve. We see it in the races often, where from practice to qualifying to the race, there's consistent improvement, and it's similar to what I saw at SVG last year. When we raced against him, he'd practice in the bottom 30s. He'd qualify around top 25 maybe. He'd by stage 1 would be top 20, stage 2 top 15, and he'd get a top 10 in the end. And you're like, oh, okay, that was constant improvement. You'd love to see that, and I think we've seen that out of Katherine. By the way, you know how much I pay attention to pop culture?
Let's hear it.
I got some News Nation-worthy report here. Elf Cosmetics bought Haley Bieber's cosmetic company, Rhode, this week.
I'm impressed.
For $1 billion.
That's a lot of money. I'm impressed with your makeup knowledge, frankly.
Those tuning in did not think they were getting the Elf Cosmetics acquisition report, but here we are.
Well, this is a cosmetic show because here's the Dude Wipes car. So Anthony Alfredo making laps out here. So we go from one extreme to the other here.
We do. It's the exact opposite. Right. Yes. This is about cleaning up in a different way.
I'm interested to watch Alfredo these next few weeks as he tries to climb closer to that playoff cut line. Let's get a listen to what he is working on here in these opening laps of practice.
I was actually loose off in traffic just because I lost overall grip, so I was shearing the back. By myself, it felt like it turned pretty good center off. It's like I lose the nose too early, so I have to give up a lot through the middle. So I just need more loaded turns, landing and through the center.
That shearing term is something that I've heard a lot recently that I don't feel like I've heard in years past, but it's kind of become a consistent feedback report.
Right, and let's unpack it for a second. What does he mean by shearing? That's essentially lacking lateral grip in the rear. When we see a car get loose, and what he's talking about specifically shearing is it feels like the rear slowly but surely starts to slide. It gets greasy in the rear tires. That's a shear, basically. And what sometimes drivers will say is, I want more lateral grip, more grip under lateral load, that sort of thing. You just want to be able to lean on that right rear tire more. That's pretty consistent here as well. And then what he talked about in traffic where you get tight in the center, absolutely. You're constantly fighting dirty air here and trying to get that car to turn the center when you're running in traffic. And you'll see tiny differences in line as we watch Sammy Smith go a little bit higher here than Jeffrey Earnhardt. At times, though, you'll see another car just dip that left headlight lower or try to get that right headlight outside of their right rear quarter panel just to get some air on the front and help that car turn, because it really does not want to. At 3,400 pounds, as you head in these concrete corners, especially as the rubber lays down, it doesn't want to turn.
Saw Jeffrey Earnhardt there in the second Sam Hunt Racing car this weekend. Second start for Jeffrey this year, also ran at Talladega.
Always love to see him here in the Xfinity Series. Oh, Chastain makes big move around Sammy Smith there. Carla, you have more on Sammy Smith?
Yeah, I do. He was extremely disappointed after that DQ in Charlotte last week, especially after crossing the finish line 5th. He said, you know what, though, we win and lose as a team. They felt like they had the speed last week, but maybe not so much the balance as far as practice right now. They're trying to test drive hard into 3 to see if that sticks for tonight. I also asked him about the track bumps in turns 3 and 4. He said he talked with some truck guys after the race last night. They don't really expect it to be that much of a factor, at least in comparison to what the Cup guys are going to experience when they get out on the track later today, guys.
Sammy is second on the board right now. He has been on a long run here, 29 laps, so getting a good feel of what kind of race car he's got. There's Philip Bell, his crew chief.
And the 8 and the 9 have just done one long run here in practice. But what are they basically at? We got Sammy Smith at 30 laps completed right now, so that's a major run. Fuel run here is about 70, 80 laps.
8 minutes left in Group 1 of practice. Kyle Sieg still pacing this group. Back in Nashville, final minutes of the first group of practice for the NASCAR Xfinity Series. Getting a look at Blaine Perkins, 31 car for Jordan Anderson Racing. Werner Trucking on that car. Company based in Minnesota, but going to have 25, 30 people here this weekend to support Blaine. So nice to have that support, and wants to give them a good run as well in this 31 car.
Right, I was speaking to his crew chief, Cody McKenzie, who was my engineer at Big Machine Racing the last 2 years. He's moved up to a crew chief role with Blaine here at Jordan Anderson Racing. And I was talking about, hey, man, what's been the challenges? What are you guys struggling with? And he said, really, it's just sort of completing the races when we have the speed and putting together in that third stage, essentially. And he said, you know, I look back at last week, we probably had a top 20 to top 15 in the bag, and we had a miscue on pit road in the third stage, and that took us out of it, and we finished off the lead lap. And he was like, it's those sorts of things we have to clean up. But Blaine's been learning these race cars, improving week by week, he said, and it's really been an interesting process for him. You've got a young driver who's consistently learning, and then a crew chief as well who's trying to learn to be a crew chief. So he's doing a good job, though, and I think this team, you know, we saw them get that top 10 at COTA, which was awesome, and I wouldn't be surprised to see more of those, especially with what we've seen out of Jeb Burton and what he's been able to put together this year. It's been a really big year for Jordan Anderson Racing, and I think you'll start to see the fruits of their labors as we go through the season.
Yeah, that entire team, all three cars, really starting to improve. You can see it year to or week to week, rather. As is the Alpha Prime group. Brennan Poole, 44 cars, had a really solid year.
He has. He's been, you know, just lurking.
Yeah,
it's I look at those super speedways as an opportunity. This is a car that could upset a lot of folks that are currently in the playoffs and hurt a lot of feelings if he's able to go do something big on a super speedway. He just seems to always be in the running late, especially if it's one of those wild ones. He takes care of the race car well. Remember, he was in the Dash for Cash this year, which was wild. You know, Brennan just does a lot with not a lot of resources, and it's really impressive to see. And I hope they're able to do something big like that, go win a super speedway, or find themselves knocking the door of the playoffs in a points position, because it's really, he puts a great effort into this, and I'm always impressed with what he's able to bring week in, week out, knowing the level of resources they have.
Good to have our buddy Myatt Snyder back in a race car this weekend. He helps Kim and I down in the pits every once in a while during the weekends as a pit spotter. But back where he is most comfortable and certainly most happy behind the wheel of a race car, driving the 91 for DGM Racing this weekend.
He wants to be in a race car.
He does.
Oh, desperately. And I'm so appreciative of his work ethic and determination to be in racing. And, you know, I've had a lot of conversations with Myatt about helping him continue to build his partnerships up with Treetop on board, who's been a good partner of his, and just trying to, you know, find more support out there. And he works day and night on that and consistently is doing outreach and you know, networking and trying to find a way to be in a race car he wants to be, and he deserves to be. You know, definitely from the results we saw in the Truck Series, he's won an Xfinity race before. You know,
Homestead, no less.
In Homestead, no less. One of the most difficult places. You know, he absolutely deserves to be in a race car full time, and that's a tough part of this business, right? It's not just about your skill behind the wheel. It's combining all the other factors, but the level of work ethic he brings to trying to be in a race car and making, you know, finding partners and making relationships and networking, I would be surprised if he doesn't find himself back in the race car.
Third start of the year for Myatt. And Matt DiBenedetto, another hard-working journeyman of the NASCAR garage. Really fast last week until they weren't.
Devastating.
Yeah, tough break for them.
Devastating. Qualified in the top 10, had amazing speed in qualifying, and then we get in the race, and immediately we see the left rear smoking. Maybe thought it was a tire going down, something like that, but then it became apparent it was a lot larger of an issue. We spoke to Pat Tryson, who's the crew chief on this car. The track bar mount failed. As you can see it smoking there. That means the rear end starts to move around as you go in the corner, and you can see that rear end. It's looking all sort of off angle there. That means the track bar mount broke. That's going to be game over. Day done. Really unfortunate with the speed they brought last weekend. But we asked Pat Tryson, was that a new car? Was there something different? He said, no, we're just starting to figure them out. So we'll see if he can continue to find that speed. But this is an organization that's really, you know, in the early stages. It reminds me of the team I drove for the last couple of years, Big Machine Racing, you know, 3 or 4 years ago, right? They're just started getting into the full-time endeavor here, building up their equipment, building up their personnel, and I really believe with Matt behind the wheel, this is a team that, as they build up that equipment level, as it gets very sideways trying to get to pit road, you know, we'll see them have a similar session to Big Machine Racing.
Yeah, and they've got a good group of guys there that are kind of the core group. You mentioned Pat Tryson. Matt, of course, has Cup experience. He's won in the Truck Series, been around the sport a long time. So smart guys that, I'm with you, I think will ultimately get that car consistently up towards the front as we get a look at Thomas Annunziata in the Koch family racing number 70 this weekend.
As he immediately hits pit road.
That's right.
Of course.
Producer's curse there.
We're getting late in this practice session.
5th start of the year for Thomas in this 70 car. Of course, shares that with Leland Honeyman.
And this team, they have flashes of brilliance.
They do.
It's just sort of pop up sometimes, and they're in the top 10. And you're like, where do they come from? So it's talking about a new young organization doing a lot with little resources and not a lot of people, but they definitely surprised a lot of people with the speed they bring some weeks.
Aiden McHugh took over as crew chief for that car earlier this year. He was a longtime engineer at Junior Motorsports, so certainly some knowledge that he can bring over as he begins his crew chiefing career, but great experience in his back pocket as well. As we conclude this first group of practice, Kyle Sieg, you see him there leading the way as Group 2 gets ready to hit the racetrack.
It's shined up, it's buttoned up. The racetrack is spectacular, and we're delighted to be back in Music City.
This has been a really action-packed track over the last few races. Look forward to the same today here at Nashville Super Speedway.
Been the class of the field, make it official. He is best of show, Justin Allgaier.
There is no stopping A.J. Allmendinger.
Play with my guitar, man.
Let's go! Wrecking down the front straightaway to the start-finish line. Big crash.
Stay in it.
John Hunter Nemechek with the track completely blocked down on the apron. He'll take the checkered flag.
The historic win, number 100, happens today in Music City.
Love being here in Nashville. So does Kyle Sieg right now. Fastest in group number 1 over some pretty good cars there. Sammy Smith and Daniel Dye round out the top 3.
Really impressive one-lap speed there. We had a lot of cars that ran over 30 laps. Ross Chastain, Sammy Smith, Daniel Dye. So a lot of drivers getting long runs in there. Anthony Alfredo will be one to watch. Always has speed late when it matters. Had a lot of speed last week. And then Maya Snyder there in 9th. Keep an eye on him. His limited starts. You know how badly he wants to have a good run.
We've talked a lot about Ross Chastain in the 9 car. Let's hear from him now downstairs with Carla.
Yeah, Dylan here with Ross Chastain, 5th fastest in practice. The second group of drivers, a lot of them just got a rundown of all the lines that you ran in practice. So what'd you do that was so special there?
I moved around, Carla. For our acceptance Chevy, getting back in the Xfinity car, a lot less downforce, a lot less drag, and a lot less braking potential. So my fast lap was not fast. I drove into 1 the first time and way overshot the corner for the first couple laps. Just trying to learn and moving around. A little tight for Corey Shea in the group here at JRM, and I think they'll free it up for me. Yeah, just started moving around, just learning. That's what's so cool about this track with the traction compound that SMI puts down. Our acceptance Chevy has the beginnings of what we need for later today to go compete, but we got to make some adjustments, and we'll learn from other Ford cars. It's what's so good about JRM having 2 cars in the first group, 3 in the next. A lot of information gathered, and I'm confident Corey Shea can give me what I need to turn a little better. But man, these Xfinity cars are so much fun.
I was going to say, you win the Coca-Cola 600. Now you get to have some fun in the 9 car. It's been a pretty big week for you.
Absolutely, Carla. It's yeah, took off Monday, busy week, had only a few short moments midweek to kind of like just get away from all of it. But the ring was on all the way till I was getting in the car, so I did have to take it off for getting in. But what that meant last week to win the Coca-Cola 600, those glass bottle Cokes taste so good coming out of that machine, and putting a dime in to get it is just so cool. Man, that was a cool moment and something we'll never forget.
So you slept in the ring.
I've slept in the ring. I only take it off to wash my hands. Thanks
so much, guys.
That's awesome.
Pretty big win, he's right. And he mentioned his first couple laps kind of getting it sorted out. The timing and scoring backs that up. Lap 5 was his fastest one in that session, so he did eventually get it figured out.
And you heard what he said there. I way overshot the corner. What did I say about this place? Yep. It's enticing down into turn 1, and there's the guy who just won the Coca-Cola 600 last week, hops in the Xfinity car and blasts it off in that corner way too fast. And for whatever reason, you want to approach that corner visually like a mile and a half. You want to go in there, not use a lot of brake, roll a ton of speed, but when you get to the middle of the corner, if you do that style, you'll go, oh, I have not slowed down enough. And that's exactly what he experienced, especially compared to the Cup car and the braking potential that the Cup cars have. So he had to back things up. Drivers use the cones down there as reference that are on the fence, and it's a totally different reference point than what you would have in a Cup car.
Group 2 hitting the speedway, led out by Justin Allgaier, winner here in 2022. And we always think of him as the guy to beat on these concrete tracks, whether it's Dover or Bristol. But this place is concrete, but it's not like those tracks. It is very different, very unique, and those same kind of tendencies that maybe make him successful, those shorter tracks, not always a guarantee here. He has found victory lane here back in 2022, as we've said, and certainly knows his way around this racetrack.
Right, and I think he's just always had a knack and a feel for concrete racetracks, and they are different. You know, the concrete is bumpier in a lot of ways because you're going over these concrete patches, and you just have to have a knack and a feel for that. And he had, you know, he won his first ever Xfinity race at Bristol. Right. Concrete, beating Brad Keselowski. I was standing on the spotter stand that day watching it as a Penske development driver, eagerly hoping to be in one of those cars one day. But I just think when the reason we think of him as a concrete sort of specialist is he does have a feel for it, and it fits his style. And I think I said the exact same thing last week about Charlotte. So please, if you're avid viewer, I'm not on repeat, but there is certain places that really fit Justin Allgaier, and these are 2 in a row that really fit his style. And the other side I'd say is that his discipline in that race car, placing the race car in the right place in the corner, is also why he's so good at Charlotte and why he's so good here.
Well, you talked about Charlotte last week. You see Jim Pullman there on the right of the screen. Have to think that they wish they could have that one back last week. Tough way to lose that one for the 17.
Really tough. I mean, definitely was one of the top 2 cars, but had gotten to the front as the 17 had that speeding issue, and I think was probably the best car and in the best position. There's a caution under 30 to go. They told him to pit. He chose not to. Had the 00 Sheldon Creed, who had no more tires left, sort of trick him a little bit, and therefore he kind of went out with him. As watching here down in 3 and 4. That was a familiar sight seeing him in the lead. But right here, he sees Sheldon Creed stay out. He decides to stay out. Everyone else basically pits, gets multiple restarts where he holds everyone off. Did a valiant job. Gets him to the side of William Byron there, but it wasn't enough. He just couldn't hang on with the level laps he had on his tires compared to those newer tires. I spoke to Jim Pullman, his crew chief, about this yesterday, and Jim was like, maybe my call to pit road was a little late. And he said, I was looking at the AI interface they have that gives them an idea of if they should pit or not. And he said it was 56% pit, 44% stay out. And he was like, so basically it's a 50-50. I knew I should probably pit. I told him maybe a little too late, and he said, it got away from us, but it is what it is. We know he had the speed, and it's one race in a long 33-race season. Yeah, and those two have a great relationship, so they shake it off and unload here with another fast race car. Junior Motorsports teammate Carson Kvapil in the 1. This is a guy that I think it's going to have to be a good summer for him, just as he continues to learn these Xfinity Series cars. He's above the playoff cut line right now, but I know they would like to be a little bit better than where they've been the last few weeks. I had a long conversation with Andrew Overstreet this week about where he thinks this race team is, and he was like, we've done a lot of film work with Carson, especially in the last 2 weeks, of explaining when we get to a car simply how we have to pass. And he said it sounds weird, but Carson has a lot of natural speed and natural talent, but there's just small things that we've started to run into in terms of being able to pass cars if we do give up spots on a restart. And so especially going to this week, they watched last year with SMT and the broadcast and sort of looked at different ways he could have made passes and sort of wanted him to say, hey, look, and give him the leeway to take chance. Say, just take chances if you want, because that's the only way we're going to make passes instead of just following a car around and hoping to make a pass. So that sounds rudimentary, but trust me, it's all the little particulars of racing in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. The one other thing they're working on that team is just their pit crew. Right now, their pit crew ranks 18th in the series on average. That's a tough situation to be in. I went through that the last 2 years at Big Machine, and it's just so tough when you give up track position on pit road. Carson does have an Xfinity Series start here, finished 12th a year ago. Eric Almirola is back in the 19 this weekend for Joe Gibbs Racing. Winner earlier this year at Phoenix in dramatic fashion. This was awesome. One of the better finishes of the year for sure. 4 wide in the closing stages. That's Alex Bowman and Hendrick Motorsports 17. And this is how they came to the line, using all the racetrack. And by just a couple of feet, Eric Almirola gets the win. I was there for it live, and I've seen it a million times, and I still had the same reaction. I'm like, oh no, is it going to work? It did work. That was a super cool race. I loved that. That was an awesome battle at the end of the race between all those drivers. One that Justin Allgaier looks back at and thinks, I probably should have had that one won as well. And there's numerous races like that this season, but Eric Almirola always a threat when he's in this 19 car. Just seems to have incredible speed no matter where we go. And we saw that last year when if he showed up, we were all racing for second in some respects. Here's Nick Sanchez. Finished 3rd last week at Charlotte. Really strong result for them after having so much speed all year. Nice for them to get a good finish as kind of a payoff for the effort this year. Really good run last week. And, it was a similar run to what he had at Texas. But at Texas in the last restart, probably in a position to get a 3rd or 4th, hits the outside wall for turn 2 and doesn't get that finish. And the team, I think, had a long conversation with Nick Patrick Donahue saying, like, you know, we've got to take those days when they're on offer. And he's done an incredible job in the stages. They have an immense amount of stage points this season, but the finishes just weren't there. There was often just late in the race, not taking the day that you have. Last week, I mean, one of the greatest sideways drives for 300 miles we've ever seen on the onboard camera. He was steering right the entire time. But the most crucial thing was late in that race, he took that top 5, third place, as opposed to trying to push for more. And I think that was a really big moment for Nick and this 48 team. And they closed up to the playoff cut line by about 20 points. So it was a really big day.
And an important weekend, of course, for this 48 as well. Team owner Scott Borchetta, so influential and important to the racing scene here in Nashville. This is a guy, too, that I'm really interested to watch this weekend. Christian Eckes in the 16 car. AJ Allmendinger, the last couple of years in this car, has been so strong. Won a couple of years ago here. Christian won the Truck Series race last year, led every single lap. And you and I both spoke to Alex Jans, the crew chief, yesterday. I think he is excited, too, and optimistic about what they've got today.
They really are, because they've got to turn it around. You know, last week, finishing 9th was really a big turning point for them, because they were, before that race, they were not even on our leaderboard. They were so far back in points from the playoff cut line, watching his win here in the Truck Series. This was a pretty familiar sight with Christian Eckes in that 19 truck. It's sort of like Corey Heim is now. If he was at the front of the field, you basically thought the only way they're going to lose is if something goes wrong. And, you know, he had a couple dominating victories like that. But this season has not gone the way they wanted, and that's pretty evident. They've had all sorts of things go wrong, but Alex Jans told us, he's like, it's not a lack of effort. It's not a lack of this young man putting in a huge amount of effort at the shop week in and week out, sometimes even too much. They've had to pull him back a little bit. But I think last week was a big day for them, Carla. They needed a solid run to get going here in the second half of the regular season.
Let's go down to Carla.
Yeah, guys, you mentioned the 16 and Eckes, and obviously they've been trying a lot of different things, trying to tailor that setup to Eckes all season long. But you mentioned the win by AJ Allmendinger back in 2023. Because of that, they're really adopting more of the setup of the 16 from that year to today. So I asked Eckes how he felt about that. He said, well, I guess if we don't perform well, then it's on me. I also mentioned his success last year in the Truck Series. He said that he really felt like he had his strongest year in the trucks last year and not really the other years previous to that. He said he hopes it translates today, but as far as expectations, he said, I really won't have any of that until we get done with this first round of practice.
Certainly one to watch. Been so strong here the last couple of years. Group 2 of practice about halfway through. Riding along for a lap here at Nashville Superspeedway with Sheldon Creed. 00 car, Ollie's Bargain Outlet on the race car this weekend. I'm always partial to yellow cars.
I like it.
All my cars are yellow.
Makes it easy on us.
Yeah, I think it's a good color. Sheldon 10th right now, fastest in group number 2, and you'll see on the leaderboard down there at the bottom of the screen, the orange highlighted boxes are the cars on track in group 2. Sheldon, as we said, fastest of this group on the speedway right now.
And one thing you may have noticed on board with him is how dark the racetrack is around here in the corners. All that rubber is laid down, and that's why you see this group 2 being slower than group 1. It's just all that rubber sort of takes sap speed and grip from the racetrack, and therefore those who went out early in group 1 were able to rip some really fast laps on a clean racetrack. These drivers are having to deal with a lot of rubber. As you watch Sheldon do this wide line, cuts it back down, almost a diamond right there. That's a unique line here, and you'll see all sorts of different approaches down in 3 and 4. 1 and 2, not so much. There's about 2 or 3 lanes, but you won't do anything as drastically different as you saw right there where he kind of cut back around. Up here, though, where he's running, you think in theory when you're in the car, you're like, this is going to work. I'm going to get a major run off the top. And you get right to the center and you think, there's not the grip I thought there would be up here for every reason. But sometimes it's just tiny, minute differences in speed in the center of the corner that still will pay off in a lap time.
Justin Allgaier is 13th on the leaderboard right now.
Track's just really black, especially 2/3 out. I feel like 1 and 2 is better than 3 and 4. I definitely think there's speed to move around, but I think you're just seeing the green racetrack.
Right, it's like we just on cue, what we were just talking about. Yeah, thanks, Justin. I appreciate it. You do well up here, my man. You don't even have to be listening to what we're talking about.
Hey, so a couple of guys to that point that we don't even see on the leaderboard right now that are outside the top 25, Eric Almirola and Brandon Jones. Even though the track is different, like Justin just explained, is that concerning to be that far down the leaderboard?
Well, when I look at their fast lap, they're really within a tenth, 2/10 of basically the fastest cars in this. So it's just really tight. I don't think that's any major concern. You know, what they'll look at is Eric Almirola has done 22 laps, 23 laps for Brandon Jones here as we look at him. You know, they'll start to compare more like at the 10 laps average. What are they looking at the 15 lap average? And if I look on there, they're both in the top 10 basically on those two, or at least the 20 car is in the 15 lap average. So that to me is more indicative of how your race car is performing as opposed to that fast lap. Just similar to what Justin Allgaier said. There's a veteran of the Xfinity Series for over a decade, and he knows when he says there's a lot of rubber on the racetrack, that means there's a lot of rubber.
See the 15 lap averages there, which is always so indicative of who really has a good race car. Good to be in a junior motorsports car right now. If you're looking for long run pace, Allgaier 3rd, as we just mentioned, and Sammy Smith and Chastain both did long runs in group number 1 and are near the top of the leaderboard for overall speed as well. So,
well, those JRM cars have been the talk of the garage for the better part of the last 3 races. Everyone's been talking about the speed they've been bringing, trying to figure out what's going on there. Why do they have so much speed week in and week out, especially at the 1.5 miles at Texas and Charlotte. They're showing it again here today. And then the only other big topic was this playoff leaderboard that we know as we rumble back into the second half of the regular season. Everyone's talking about who's in, who's out, who's close, who's going to be the one that can maybe surprise some people. And this young man, I think people are surprised if they're not paying attention to his performances. I'm not surprised. I keep hyping him up. I sound like a broken record at this point. I think people probably think I'm his agent or manager at some point of all the times I talk about him and how amazing he is. But last week, takes a week off at Texas, has a couple weeks off, obviously, to recover with his back injury, and then goes out there and, for all intents and purposes, definitely could have won that race. Qualifies on the front row, puts together a really solid race in the top 5, and it's just every time I see that, I go, I'm not surprised.
And I have to imagine for Connor, we all knew his road course prowess, but certainly expected there to be not some growing pains, but an adjustment period as he came to some of these oval race tracks. I think that second place finish last week was a pretty big statement that this kid's not just a road course ringer.
No, he's going to win an oval here any second. I mean, at Talladega, when he had that unfortunate incident on the last lap, he was in the lead. He's maybe going to win a super speedway. There's nowhere we go. I don't think he can win. And with his car control, we saw it again last week. It's absolutely sideways, holds onto it, never loses a beat. It's unbelievable. Another young man who has great car control and is probably his best friend, I guess, in some respects. These two who like to take photos of each other sleeping. Jesse Love, you know, if I look back at Rockingham, and that car was so sideways at times, he did an amazing job there. He's done it often. This place, last year he had to start basically at the back, drove through the field at a place that's historically very hard to pass. So I think Jesse's definitely the Connor Zillage category of talent and speed. They just, right now for that race team, it seems like they keep having little things that keep grabbing them. They just got to clean it up right now as we get in these summer months.
Last week was kind of one of those as well, able to salvage a decent day, but certainly want to get back on the horse and back towards the front this weekend for the 2. William Sawalich is another one who has sort of stopped the bleeding a little bit. It was a rough first half of the year, and Jeff Mindering, the crew chief all year, has said this is going to be a second half of the season team. William is learning every single weekend. He's learning the Xfinity Series. We're learning what he needs in the car, and they did a lot of learning the first half of the year, but the last couple weeks has kind of stabilized. 2 straight top 15 finishes, 15th last week at Charlotte. So I think things are starting to turn around, at least on paper, it seems like, for this 18 team.
18 years old.
Yeah,
like,
right.
I mean,
exactly.
It's so young to be jumping into a Joe Gibbs Racing Xfinity car, which we know the level of pressure put on a driver, especially a young driver, going into a Joe Gibbs Racing car with all the success they've had. We see drivers like a John Hunter Nemechek who go on to win 5, 6, 7 races in a season, and you think that's what I have to do if I get in that car. For him, it's not the case. You're coming out of ARCA. You've got to learn. You've got to take this time to learn, and the way this playoff format is designed, if you get hot as we get in these late into the summer months and late in the regular season, he could be a playoff contender for sure. So it's designed for you to be able to have the time to take your time to learn. Speaking of taking time, by the way,
yeah.
Ryan Ellis, we got that top 10, baby. Last week, first one at 144 starts. We ran into him yesterday. What was he listening to? It was us and Adam, Jamie, and I in the booth clapping and cheering at the end of the broadcast.
Exactly.
And we got up there. He's so pumped to finally get that top 10. And Carla, you just got to love his determination.
You really do, Parker. What a week it was for him. He told me he's gone back and watched that race from Charlotte last week about 25 times. Listen to this. He even downloaded the in-car audio and listened to that at the gym this week. He said, I've waited so long for this. He said, and I'm finally free. I won't have to think about this in those late race moments. He said he got some nice texts this week from his former owner, Tommy Joe Martins. Justin Allgaier also reached out, and he said, and Ross Chastain, he said, man, that was cool. He said, I told Ross, I feel like I should be the one congratulating you after last week.
Well, now that he's got one, he said, got to go get another one.
It's all about racking them up now.
I think this is the best looking car in the garage this weekend.
That is cool looking. Very Nashville.
Final few minutes of practice, the NASCAR Xfinity Series before qualifying coming up. Austin Hill cruising around the Nashville Superspeedway. Top 10 finishes in all 4 Nashville races for him the last couple of years. Gets around here pretty well.
Yeah, sitting 25th in the leaderboard right now, but as we've talked about, don't look at that one-lap speed too much. It's more about what they have late in the run, as he's done 32 laps. Was running the high side before we came back from break there. Way up in 1 and 2, way up in 3 and 4. You know how I talked about this place being deceiving in that they call it a super speedway? Well, we got some great telemetry here. Look at that mid-corner speed. About 125 miles an hour in the mid-corner there. We'll see what he has down in turn 1. Don't mind the throttle on the straightaway. That's how bumpy this place is. It's affecting our telemetry. So as we go down into 1, see that brake? It's about 50% brake of what you consider max. Down to 120 in the center. That's what us race car drivers are crazy. We're saying that it's deceivingly slow, and it's 120 miles an hour. We want to be blasting through there at 160, almost 170 down the backstretch. So this place is just so unique in its design and its shape, and you see him work in that wheel. You will do that all day long. If your car is comfortable here, you're going slow. I can almost guarantee you. I've never spoke to a race car driver that felt like this place ever had a comfortable race car. Carl Edwards and I were talking last week, and we somehow got on the top of Nashville. I don't really know how. And he goes, man, you know what's funny about that place? I've won a bunch of races there, and every time I thought, if I'm winning, those guys' cars must be driving terrible. That's Nashville.
Justin Allgaier, we've talked a lot about him and how strong he looks out of the race car in the closing minutes. Pit road here is tricky. We've seen a couple guys have some close calls, including the 7 car. We'll watch him here try to get to pit road at speed. Oh, wheel hop.
A lot of wheel hop, but you know what? You'd love to do that in practice.
Yep.
He now has the mark. He'll use something either on the outside wall or the relation to what those marks are on the bottom as his visual marks. And now he knows what's too far. So if we have a green flag pit stop, he knows how far he can push it late in the run to be able to get slowed down and get on pit road. And where you brake to get on pit road, that's the pit sequence. That all adds up. And so you want to get everything you possibly can, brake as late as you can to get into pit road. He was really pushing it. Justin Allgaier also really good after 25 laps, by far the fastest car in the field from the averages we're seeing for our buddies at Racing Insight. So once again, Justin Allgaier is going to be really competitive.
Junior Motorsports, as we said, top 3 right now in those 15-lap runs. Here's Jeff Burton. Finished 20th last week, but before that, it had 3 straight top 10s and in a good spot right now for the playoffs above the cut line, but he's another one that kind of needs to watch his back these next few weeks if he wants to stay above the cut line.
It's the biggest thing he's paying attention to, but this team is the closest thing to Moneyball in the NASCAR Xfinity Series in 2025 of being in the playoffs. They are manipulating the stages. Last week, they took a set of tires in the first stage, got up to 5th. That hurt them late in the race as they didn't have a set of tires, but it still paid off points-wise. Got involved in that incident into 3 on the last lap where he said, to be honest, he just had no idea there was a car outside of him. So he took that on his shoulders as a mistake, but he's so paying attention to all those points, who looks good out there, and I think this team is really excelling. 18th fastest on average in speed this year, but finding themselves solidly in the playoffs has been very impressive by all of them.
Harrison Burton on the racetrack as the final seconds tick off here in Group 2 of practice. He's another one that, as we get into the summer months here, going to be a factor and a story on that playoff cut line.
Well, everything I just said about his cousin, I could just repeat basically here for Harrison Burton at 25. They've done an excellent job building up this organization. They've done a great job in taking stage points when it was on offer and sort of, doing some offset strategies at times. So I think he deserves to be where he is, right there on the playoff cut line. But really, that's overachieving where this team was just a year ago.
Practice is over, and Kyle Sieg from Group 1 ends up at the top of the board, Carla.
Yeah, that's right, and he told me he was a little surprised about that, so why were you surprised?
Just surprised how fast the lap was. I really didn't think I had a good lap, but it pulled up, but the track has slowed down a lot from this group, so hopefully we can lay a lap down as good as I did in practice and qualifying and see where we end up.
I was going to say, now the bigger challenge, how do you replicate that speed coming up in qualifying?
Well, nothing will compare to what last year was. It was really, really hot last year, so I'm glad it's at night this time, but we'll see. Hopefully we can have some good racing all day, and we'll see where we end up.
Thanks.
Sieg Boy's always fast on these.
I like the hair flick.
I did too.
The perfect hair move with the hand there. That was awesome.
And now I thought we were going to maybe get in slow-mo here.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Kyle Sieg, fastest in practice qualifying, up next. Practice officially done here at the Nashville Superspeedway for the Xfinity Series. Just heard from Kyle Sieg. Here's a look at the rest of the top 10. Top 9 from Group 1, and Sheldon Creed fastest in Group 2.
Yeah, this is all Group 1. That shows you how much that rubber really changed the racetrack. For those going out early in qualifying, they're going to have a tough time with that, but Sheldon Creed, the only one that got in from the second group. And Kyle Sieg, I know it's just practice, but that's really cool for that team and for him. And you know that they're down there being like, hey, man, we're P1 in practice today. How about that one? I was on NASCAR Reddit for a little bit. Some of them were wondering who put the supercharger in there. I don't know if they brought that out there, but hey, look at this also. So this is what we've been talking about with the rubber laying down. If you look before practice, not a lot, just on the high side, and then look to the right and all the rubber that laid down on this racetrack.
Here at Nashville. So what were your first impressions of the track so far?
Yeah, it's cool. It's a lot different, being concrete. I've only really ran the asphalt stuff. So yeah, it's cool. I like the 1.5 mile racing for sure. It's track took a lot of rubber. I'm not used to that big of a swing in practice from my little experience. So that was really good to feel. I'll be curious to see what that does for us qualifying, how it affects everyone's balance, but I feel pretty good about it.
We know this 17 certainly has the speed, but this starts a pretty special stretch of races for you through the rest of the season. Are you excited about all that?
Yeah, I'm super excited. These guys do an awesome job. I'm grateful that I have the pleasure to drive this race car. So yeah, super excited to get racing here a couple races in a row, and yeah, we'll see how we go.
See how it goes for Corey Day, guys.
Great run last night in the Truck Series. Top 5, ran up there all day. One of the best. Yeah, and one of the best stock car races I've seen him do. and his limited starts in stock cars. And, you know, I know this is a high-pressure situation for Corey to go to Hendrick Motorsports. They don't have a history really of developing drivers.
Right.
If you look at it, they get drivers after someone else has let them figure it out. But they're doing that here with Corey Day, and I think he's made a really quick accession. And last night was proof to that, to run as well as he did in trucks. And now, after having that time on track and it goes well, I just know his confidence is probably higher than any time he stepped in this Xfinity car before, after the run he had last night.
And last time he was in this car in the Xfinity Series was at Texas and was really, really strong.
Really
there.
strong run there.
So some differences in the racetrack, but similar in style with the intermediate approach. So expecting good things and continued improvement for the 17 car. This is what everybody's chasing all weekend at Nashville, one of those custom Gibson guitars.
It's a home game for the NASCAR Xfinity Series racing at Charlotte Motor Speedway.
The beast in the southeast.
It's been a smooth day. You know the deal. Green flag, and rolling. You know what I love about this race? The spot is a nightmare. 20 red, white, blue cars.
Hitting them right between the eyes. First time Byron going to get the sweep.
We got a speeding penalty. Damn it. The engine's stuff being the fence off too. I'm copy with you. 48 just ran over us. Somebody needs to break his teeth in. Every week he's doing something stupid. I stayed out. I said pit, but whatever. If it doesn't work, I'll take the blame for it. We got faith in you, brother. Win as a team, lose as a team. Stay down, down. Yellow's out. We're in it here, guys. It's killed. KO'd. Connor, here's the deal. The 17 is on tire as well. You got to get going in the restart zone is your only shot here.
It's overtime at Charlotte Motor Speedway.
Same line, Kevin. Off you now. He's off you by 2. All clear. Go get him here.
Nothing Chastain can do. It's helpless right there.
Hang on. 88 rolling up these bumpers. Clear. White flag. One more. Bring it home, buddy. Come into the checker here. Wreck and bag. Caution down. Baby. Let's go. Choice. Good job, dude. Way to fight back. Oh, that sucks. Boys, Alan's on me. Sorry. Awesome job there, William. Thank you, dude. That was awesome.
And a lot of special moments happened in Charlotte last week, especially for Ryan Ellis, who did score his first top 10 last week. We've talked a little bit about it during practice, but this was a really special moment for you. Try to put in words for fans out there what that meant to you.
I'm terrible at putting it into words because I just didn't know what to say after the race. Was just so happy. I've done a lot of things in the sport, started and parked, and just grinded to get to where we're at. And just it was just so relieving to get that monkey off my back. And I think it's only like our 13th race with DGM Racing, so I feel like we can make it a lot more common now.
You said you even had maybe more media than William Byron last week, right?
Yeah, I was still getting changed when our haulers started pulling out, so I thought I was going to end up riding to Florida where the team's based, which I was cool with at that point. Like, I was like, well, that's a weird way to celebrate, but it'll be a great story, and I mean, it's so cool, and I really can't describe the amount of relief I feel this week.
Yeah, anything goes when you score your first top 10, guys.
I thought he had a hilarious comment to us yesterday about the racing reference page that has all these drivers' stats, and he said that one top 10, it almost looks like a mistake that somebody left it in there on accident. He said, I've got to change, I've got to get more, so it looks like it's supposed to be there. As qualifying begins, here's a look at a couple drivers that have got their first career top 10s this year, in addition to Ellis.
We got Glenn Reed on track here for Joey Gase Motorsports. Cool story here. He got this call from Joey on Thursday, flew down here yesterday, and Joey basically said, hey, if you want, if you qualify this car in, you can come down and drive it. So he said, yep, I'll be there. Modified racer from Connecticut up in my area. Races at Line Rock a little bit with some Miatas. But he just so desperately wants to be in these NASCAR stock cars. Says it's so much fun. It's a dream come true. We'll see if he has the speed. We won't know for a while if he's probably made the race, but I think it's a solid lap for a guy that was asking Sheldon Creed and I exactly what to do in qualifying when he gets in this race car. So I thought that was pretty impressive. 31.8.
And he does have a couple starts last year for Joey Gase Racing. Finished 28th in New Hampshire. And he'll set the early mark here, 31.81. The time for Glenn Reen. Here's Ross Chastain. This will be a good barometer of the cars that go out early. What kind of speed is in the racetrack.
Yeah, struggled to get back to the throttle there. Just had to hesitate for a second. Uses all the racetrack. I think some of that's just the rubber you see down there. The lack of grip. Car will get a little edgy on the entry here into 3. Can he get it down the bottom? Chooses to kind of keep it about a foot or two off the bottom of the yellow line. That's pretty typical.
Told Carla he was pretty tight in practice. And he will go to the top of the board at a 31.22. But we'll see how that stands up as we get towards the end of qualifying. Ross, as we said, a winner here in the Cup Series, and of course the winner last week at the Coca-Cola 600 in Charlotte, as Jeffrey Earnhardt takes the green flag for Sam Hunt Racing.
And to put Ross's lap in context, last year Ty Gibbs had the pole at 30.80. So, and that was a really hot day, as we heard Kyle Sieg mention. So I expect the speeds to get a little, possibly be a little faster today, a little bit more mild temperatures. Jeffrey Earnhardt here goes down into 3. So he chooses to be a little bit lower, right on that yellow line compared to Ross Chastain, who was about a foot or two up. There's a lot of different ways to tackle this racetrack.
We talked about that bump over there in 3 and 4. You saw it pretty evident down right around the bottom of the racetrack. Jeffrey will be disappointed with that lap. 31.89, third of the 3 qualifiers so far.
And I think we'll see how this goes, but I think that puts in context how good Glenn Reen's lap was.
Right.
At 35. If he's able to beat a Sam Hunt Racing car of Jeffrey Earnhardt behind the wheel, that might be a lap that's able to get him in the show.
Jeffrey has raced here at Nashville, finished 7th back in 2022. Katherine Legge was scheduled to qualify next. Sounds like a little bit of a minor issue maybe with the window net on pit road. So Mason Massey will fire off the 45 for Alpha Prime Racing.
And to explain what might be happening there, these window nets are super tight for aero reasons. They have to use basically a wrench to get them up and latched half the time, and sometimes it can run into issues where they have to sort of adjust the window net. So they'll get that fixed hopefully and be able to get her to be able to do a lap.
7th start of the year for Mason Massey here in this car. Sharing it with a couple different drivers. A little wide there at the exit of 2.
When we went on board Lawson Hill in practice, we saw the mid-corner speed was roughly around 120, probably more like 130, 135 in qualifying here. And it can look slow at times as these race cars go around here, but it's just the lack of grip around here. The car, the way the banking level is here, you're so reliant on, you're leaning on the right front so much in 1 and 2. 32.5, definitely not a lap that he's going to be excited about.
Matt DiBenedetto is next. We talked about him and speed they had last week before mechanical issues sidelined them early at Charlotte. Everybody chasing Ross Chastain right now, still to 31.22. Matt's finished 10th here in the Xfinity Series all the way back in 2010.
Use all the racetrack and sub on the exit at 2.
He's a little bit off that yellow line, gets the car down pretty close to it through 3 and 4.
See it bouncing around as it hits that bump we've mentioned down in 3 and 4. The front end just bouncing all the way out of the corner. P2 to 31.4. I think he'll be happy with that lap.
A lot of character in this racetrack. Lots of different approaches to how to make speed. Carla?
Thanks, Dylan. Yeah, here with Eric Almirola. It's been a minute since you had to start here, since 2011. So what were your thoughts on your first time back out?
Well, just, take the first few laps and knock the rust off, and then, settle in from there. But I thought our car was a little off of where I need it. Just not quite the stability I need, and not turning quite like I need it to. So I gave Seth and the guys a few problems to fix. They're hard problems to fix when the car is not connected like it is right now, but the long run pace seems okay. So I feel like if we fix the first 15 to 20 laps of the run, we'll be in really good shape. So great weekend for us and for Young Life. Got a lot of people coming out today and excited about tonight. This place always puts on a great race, so looking forward to tonight.
Thanks, Dylan.
Thanks, Carla. Saw Parker Retzloff jump to third with his lap there in the 4 car for Alpha Prime, 31.74. Here's Thomas Annunziata for Koch Family Racing on the clock.
And Retzloff got a little loose in 3 and 4, had a big drift out of turn 4 there. We'll probably see that often through this qualifying session. Just seems like there's a lack of grip out there. A lot of cars look like they're trending tight, but some will probably jump the shark a little bit and be loose, especially down in 3 and 4. And just to unpack what Eric Almirola was talking about, that's typical here, where the car is loose on entry, then tight in the center. That's one of the hardest things to fix as a crew chief, because you're asking them to basically change 2 entirely different things that are connected.
I also feel like as Annunziata concludes his run in the 4th spot, I feel like you said this when we saw Almirola in practice, that even though he's maybe not always happy with the car early, he always comes to life in the race, and he's always a factor.
He finds a way. There's cup level experience there that you can't buy. You just have to have from racing in the Cup Series as long as he did, winning Cup races, racing at that level, and that's you never count him out when he's in a Joe Gibbs Racing Xfinity car, no matter how practice went.
Here's Kyle Sieg, fastest in practice a bit ago. Finished 25th here the last couple of years. He's way high in 3.
Yeah, chooses to be up in the middle of the track. See how this pays off for him if he gets momentum on the exit. Not quite. Kind of hold station a little bit, about 3.5 tenths off of Ross Chastain. Up to 3rd. It's a solid lap.
31.600, the official time there for Sieg.
600, I've never heard that.
600.
Yeah. 600.
There's lots of different ways you can say
I was trying to find all the different ways I can say 31
flat. 6 flat there,
flat.
however you want to say it. Mason Maggio out in the 2nd Joey Gase Racing car. I like this car too. Flitz polish.
It's good looking. Sort of stealthy.
It is.
Yeah. Sinister looking. He looked like he got really tight off of turn 2. You could just see all the wheel, and all the bump really affected the front end there. Had to chase it up the racetrack.
That transition to the apron, always so rough. 6th for Mason Maggio, 31.77. And here's Katherine Legge, scheduled to go out 4th. Talked about that window net issue. They've got that sorted. And she will make her qualifying attempt in the Elf Cosmetics 32.
And we've talked about it. She's picked some really tough tracks. And once again, in qualifying, this place is really tough. Does a good job getting it down the... Oh, real loose there in 2. That's the chase up the racetrack. That's going to sap time. It's the same thing we saw at Rockingham with her, where she got super loose out of turn 2 there. It's so hard to adjust to the grip level that you're going to have in these Xfinity cars. You can't do a mock run in practice. Your first lap, her first lap on the racetrack is going to be the most grip you have in practice, and then they're going to tape it up at 300 pounds of downforce, pump up the tires, and you have more grip than ever. And that loose down in 2 really hurt her lap time there.
9th of the 9 cars that have qualified. Tough lap there for Katherine Legge. Ross Chastain, fastest right now in the opening group of qualifying. Back at Nashville, qualifying rolls on as Mike Snyder hits the racetrack. The last 7 qualifying efforts here at Nashville have produced 7 different drivers on pole. Ty Gibbs getting the honors last year.
Myatt was up in the top 10 in practice on single lap speed. Obviously in Group 1, which we talked about, had a lot of speed there. Gets a little, has a higher line coming to the green, trying to just get an extra momentum there. And a little wiggle there in 3 and 4. That's going to tell you as a driver, okay, this thing could potentially be a little loose in the center. You'll adjust as you go off into 1. Does a nice job through there. About 3/10 off Ross Chastain right now.
This has been the deciding factor of who picks up speed. He's right here through 3 and 4.
Yeah, and he chose to get all the way to the bottom. It felt like he almost had to park the speed a little bit. Didn't use all the racetrack off of 4. I think he lost a lot down there. 31.9. Don't know if he'd be too happy with that lap. It was a clean lap, but you know, stepping these race cars, as I said with Katherine Legge, you don't get a chance to do a mock qualifying run anymore. The way practice works, the only feel you get for qualifying is that first lap on track in a race run, essentially. And you know, especially if you haven't been to a track for a while, you haven't been in a car in a while, and then you're asked to, after practice and going way slow, to add 300 pounds of downforce and pump up the tires and suddenly go about 6 to 8 tenths faster. And it's a really, really tough thing to do.
Logan Bearden in the 14 car. Normally see Garrett Smithley behind the wheel of this SS Greenlight machine. I've seen Logan a couple times in the Xfinity Series over the last couple of years. Ran here a year ago as well. He'll be 11th of the 12 qualifiers on his run, 32.04.
This will give us a good litmus test where the track is at this time. Sammy Smith.
He was really good second in practice and also really good on the long run as well, as were Chastain and Allgaier out of the Junior Motorsports camp. Tracker looks good so far. Lost a little bit there through the center of 1 and 2.
Yeah, I like the line. It just started, you saw him sort of lose the front lazily on the exit, chase it all the way out to the wall. He goes a bit lower than we saw Ross, but really accepted that bump well, barely even affect the race car at all.
Good lap here for Sammy Smith. Not going to be good enough to dispatch Chastain from the top spot, but second right now for Sammy Smith. Junior Motorsports 1 and 2 right now, Carla.
Yeah, here with Brandon Jones, who said he felt pretty good about practice. You're also back with JGR, who's had a lot of success here, but you said you kind of expect maybe some different elements today, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think we're certainly as fast as Xfinity Internet on the long run. We just got to figure out how to continue to make that build on the short run, you know. So, yeah, all in all, I mean, I loved watching this race back last year because it showed how good I was, but it showed how good these race cars were as well. So we've got a good read on this racetrack. Like I said, I really, really liked the way our in-run balance was. I thought we were super competitive and felt like I could easily win with that kind of balance in that car that we just had. So big thanks to Charbroil and Menards and everybody there. Hopefully we can get them a second win of the season. Be an awesome one to do at Nashville. Love coming to this town and this state of Tennessee and got to go out on Broadway a little bit and check that out last night. So it's always fun to come to Nashville and do everything here.
Thanks.
My buddy Steve Lachart likes to say, in every long run, there is
a short run.
A short run. And that's what he's referencing right there. They definitely had long run pace, but hopefully can find that short run pace. Nick Lights out here, slides it through 3 and 4. Pretty solid lap.
Lights will come across the line and slot into 9th, 31.83. Second SS Greenlight car here we've seen in the last couple minutes. Here's Daniel Dye. We talked about his Colleague Racing teammate Christian Eckes and the dominating run he had in the Truck Series here last year. This guy was pretty good too, finished second in that race. So Colleague has a lot to be excited about this weekend with a couple of their guys.
And he had a pretty interesting event last week. The left rear wheel came
off
under caution. Had a funny quip on the radio. It was fun playing with you guys. That was their race done. So it seemed like he kind of knew that was going to happen. Had an indication maybe they didn't get everything tight over there. It was wobbling around.
2 top 10s the last month or so for Daniel Dye. And a nice lap here. Third quickest, 31.35 for the 10 car.
Definitely a solid lap. Looks smooth.
First start in the Xfinity Series, obviously, for Daniel. Here's another fast rookie, Taylor Gray, in the Joe Gibbs Racing 54 car. And I think a guy that a lot of people have circled today is one you may have to contend with. He is way up the racetrack, though, in 1 and 2.
So we talked about it being enticing down into turn 1. It invites you to throw a ton of speed down there. Chastain talks about him doing that in practice. That's exactly what you saw from Taylor Gray there. He felt with the grip he had in 3 and 4, man, I'm just going to send this off into 1. It didn't stick. He still recovers nicely.
Yeah, still not a bad lap. Gained a lot there on entry into 3. Lost a little bit off the exit of 4, but 5th fastest right now, 31.42. Maybe a what-if type of lap there for Taylor Gray.
If he could do it over again, I assure you he'd pick a different braking point into 1. But I think great recovery. It shows you the speed that race car has, that he was able to go that high in 1 and 2 and still recover and have that lap that he did.
Blaine Perkins next up. Second car out of the Jordan Anderson Racing stable to qualify today. Finished 24th last week at Charlotte.
They felt like they had a better day than that coming together, but had a mishap on pit road, lost a lap because of that in stage 3. Sort of locked them a lap down. Felt like they were more like a top 20, top 15 car that weekend.
Checkered flag for Perkins. He'll go 6th. Good lap, 31.51. Approaching the halfway mark here in qualifying. Let's check in downstairs with Carla.
Yeah, here with Carson Kvapil, a rookie in the series, but you do have experience here. Last year you finished 12th, so you have some comfortability at least with this track.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I feel like last year was a pretty big struggle for me, honestly. It was probably one of the biggest struggles I had at the racetracks we went to, and coming back here, we changed a lot of stuff. Obviously, I prepped pretty well for this one, considering it wasn't one that I felt like I was good at, but this whole Bass Pro Shops Junior Motorsports team really gave me a car as fast as XFINITY Mobile this weekend, and we didn't really have the fire-off speed in practice, and we came in and worked on it a few times and got it to where it was pretty good. So hopefully we can qualify a little better than 30th like we did last year, but I'm pretty confident so far, and we'll see what we do in this qualifying lap.
Dylan?
I think if he qualifies in the 30s, he's going to have had a serious problem.
Yeah. Well, his team told me that the goal going into this week was first and foremost qualify better than the top 25.
Well, their goals
which I
are
assume
aligned
they
then.
will.
Yep.
It was a tough qualifying session for him last year. He said this was a tough start for him in his limited starts last year. I raced around him a lot in that day. I thought he did an okay job. He was tough to pass, I'll tell you that. It was frustrating. He beat me in the end.
Yeah,
So, yeah. I had no brakes, though. I need to have that excuse out there, by the way.
Well, and you actually, I was going to say you don't need brakes, but here you actually do need
No, you
brakes.
do need
Very
brakes.
important.
Yeah, no, you can't get around this place without them. Taylor Gray tried down to one. It didn't work.
Chris Wright concludes his qualifying lap down in 15th at a 30.
You know, you just let him do his thing and let.
Here's Brennan Poole for Tommy Joe Martin's the Alpha Prime Racing Group. Big weekend already for Brennan. So he and wife Lindsay got married, or eloped rather, at the start of this year. They had their official wedding reception on Thursday here just down the road in Murfreesboro. That sponsor of his Mac Door Systems, they've got a big presence there. Had all his pit crew, his road guys attended. Said the highlight was watching Tommy Joe line dance.
That doesn't surprise me. Tommy Joe, he loves the spotlight. He's one of those owners that doesn't shy away from it at all. Had him on my podcast a couple times. He's a really funny dude. He's very open.
He is one of the great personalities in the garage. Former driver, of course, and now team owner of 3 cars in the field. Brennan Poole, one of his cars, goes 11th. Halfway through qualifying, Ross Chastain pacing the way right now. Another full weekend of NASCAR racing is well underway. Busy day ahead here at Nashville. Cup Series follows us with their practice and qualifying at 4:30 Eastern on Prime. The Xfinity Series race live on the CW tonight at 7:30, and the Cup Boys in action for a night race tomorrow at 7 p.m. on Prime. Hey, we've got a cool thing here on CW the rest of this summer. Some pretty solid names from the Cup Series going to be joining the broadcast booth with you and Jamie and Adam, kind of in a rotation. Austin Cindric will be up here tonight, so it will be great to get his perspective. And we'll have Ross Chastain, of course, who's in the field today, and a winner last weekend in the Cup Series at the next race for the Xfinity Series in a couple weeks at Mexico City.
And with Austin in the booth, the average height of our booth went up by a foot.
That's correct.
So
yes.
it's pretty exciting.
He's very tall.
Yes, very so.
Here's Eric Almirola. This will not be what he wants. Just trying to keep it out of the fence here. It still did, actually.
Yeah, it's
you're
similar
right.
to Taylor Gray. I mean, maybe this was a plan, was to use all the racetrack like that, get a ton of speed on entry, gains it back down in 3 and 4. That car looks so stable over the bump. Doesn't even have to use all the racetrack on exit.
Losing a little bit, but it's coming back the right way to the top. Eric Almirola. So made me eat my words there. Kind of an ugly look in turn 1, but it was fast, and that's all that matters right now for Almirola, 31.15.
Every week we see these laps in the Xfinity Series qualifying. They look ugly, they look out of control, and it's like, oh, that was fast. You just got to drive these things. It's awesome.
However you make speed. However you got to do it is what you got to do. Here's Harrison Burton, the AM Racing Ford, number 25.
Far more conventional approach than we saw with Eric, but it's working for him down the backstretch, gaining. Gives a little bit up on entry. Starting to go the wrong way there, but he's going to get it back again on the exit. Great exits off of 2 and 4.
Yeah, wrapped the bottom really nicely there out of 4. Harrison goes into the 4th spot, 31.32. Nice lap for the 25 machine.
You could not have seen two wildly different approaches than those 2 laps back to back. And both net with
fast.
Yeah, both net with about a tenth and a half of each other.
That's what we love about the Xfinity Series in these cars. They do give you a lot of options for how you want to approach your laps. Here's William Sawalich, one of the rookies in the Xfinity Series this year. First Nashville start for him in the Xfinity Series, but has one down the road here in the Argument Arts.
Fast.
It is good.
Really
3/10.
He didn't end up as high as Taylor Gray or Eric Almirola, but had a similar approach, but it really worked for him. It turned well off of 4. This is a big lap.
Joe Gibbs' cars have been so fast here in qualifying, and they go 1-2 right now. So Walich to the top, 30.86. That is a monster lap.
That's faster than last year's pole. Really good lap.
Good lap. Carla.
Yeah, here with Jesse Love, who started last year and finished 3rd. I asked if qualifying was really that important if he finished 3rd, and you said yes, you're expected to have a good run.
Yeah, my crew chief yells at me we don't get stage points, so I'm sure Parker understands from the pre-race meet or post-race meetings last year. But yeah, I think our car was pretty good. We need about a tenth after practice, but I mean, we needed about a half a second last weekend and still find ourselves in a position to win, I thought, by the end of it. So looking forward to today. Hopefully we can qualify as fast as Xfinity Mobile, but this place is really tricky and it's not your typical mile and a half, but I love concrete and cool to have tight on the car this weekend.
Getting ready to roll off, Dylan.
Yeah, he was joking last week that they needed to replace the driver. I think if they had, would have wanted him back for this week. He's pretty good here last year.
He was great here last year. I know what he's referencing there. By the way, Jeremy Clements with a really solid lap there in 6th place when we were listening to Jesse. I know what he's talking about in those debrief meetings. I saw Danny Stockman get on him. Danny, he's a go-getter, man. He's intense. He wants everything out there. He doesn't want to give a single point up, and he pushes Jesse constantly, but it works, and Jesse has his talent and skill to sort of deliver when it's on offer.
Here's Jeb Burton concluding his qualifying run. Finished 7th here back in 2021. And he'll slot in 5th right now to 31.31.
We've got to kind of change our reference here. If we're seeing 4/10 off because of the massive lap William Sawalich put down, that's 5th. That's how fast William Sawalich was.
Yeah, maybe you want to compare to 2nd. Brandon Jones, the 4th and final Joe Gibbs Racing car to roll out here. See what he's learned from his teammates.
Probably a different approach there in 1 and 2 than we saw from them. Just a little bit more conventional. Didn't quite have the momentum off of 2 that we've seen some others get. See what 3 and 4 has to offer.
That bump upset him a little bit. It looked like right in the center.
He wasn't happy with the short run speed in this car. I think they've still got some work to find there. Still ends up in the top 5. That's right. Being 4/10 off puts you 4th.
31-27 for Jones. Taylor Gray, the other Gibbs car, down in 12th. Carson Kvapil, heard from him a bit ago. Heard his goals for this qualifying effort.
Not 30th.
Not 30th.
All right, Carson. What do we got here? Good entry.
JRM cars in practice, really good on the long run.
Really good. If he can stay here, he definitely won't be 30th.
No, he won't. Good single lap speed here. Tracker going the right direction on entry to 3. Lost a little bit there through the center.
I'd have to say he got a little bit tight there. He couldn't get the car to sort of rotate when he wanted to. That still puts you P2 right now.
Not 30th.
Not 30th, I can assure him. Great lap, Carson.
Yeah, good lap for Carson Kvapil. Carla?
Yeah, here with Sam Mayer, who has the best average of any active driver. So why are you so comfortable here in Nashville?
Yeah, the speed chart didn't say that we were as fast as Xfinity Mobile, but this Auto Bell Ford Mustang is pretty good in the long run. So I think we'll have a shot at it, keep that average in a good spot, but should be all right.
Thanks.
And I'll tell you why he's so good here. He didn't give us any sort of insights. We watched Ryan Ellis. Ryan Ellis actually on a really good lap.
Yeah, again, compared to that pole speed. But if you look at everybody else, he should be right around the top 10. Just a little outside, 14th, yep.
So I want to finish what I was saying about Sam Mayer there. The reason he is so good here is what you'll notice about Sam is places where the car is, where you have to be uncomfortable to be fast, especially the entry at turn 3, that is where he thrives. He just has a knack and a skill. I look back at Charlotte and what he's done there in the past to drive really uncomfortable race cars very fast. I think that's why he's been so good.
Good at a place like Homestead too, where you're kind of on the edge and you got to be searching.
You got to be comfortable letting the car wiggle on the entry, and it's a very uncomfortable feeling. It feels like it's going to just suddenly jump away from you, but he does that so well.
Here's Ryan Sieg.
Clawing it back off of 4.
He did pick up some time there from the exit of 4 to the start-finish line. 5th for the 39. Nice lap for Ryan Sieg. Brother Kyle fastest in practice earlier, as we said. And here's Christian Eckes. I've talked a lot about him so far today. Winner in the trucks last year. This team won a couple years ago with A.J. Allmendinger.
A.J. hit about everything that day and still won. It was impressive. I watched him just move people out of the way constantly for me as he was spinning people out left and right, but still got the win. It's all forgotten when you get the checkered flag.
Eckes down through the middle of 3 and 4.
And he had to wait on it. They saw the wheel he had in the center. Just had to hesitate to get back the throttle. Up to 6. I think he'll be happy with that.
Certainly can work with that later on this evening. 6th right now for Eckes. Joe Gibbs Racing at the top of the board right now with William Sawalich, but plenty of other fast cars still to come. Jesse Love. 10 cars remaining in Xfinity Series qualifying from Nashville. William Sawalich, fastest by a couple tenths right now in the Joe Gibbs Racing number 18 car. Carson Quapple, Eric Almirola, Ross Chastain, and Ryan Sieg round out the top 5. Sheldon Creed up through the gears, and he'll see the green flag as he works his way down the backstretch and out of 3 and 4. This has not been a good place for Sheldon. It's the best finish of 17th.
Big wide entry. We saw him do this in practice. Almost dives forward a little bit. Actually stays up high to get that run to the green.
Ollie's Bargain outlet colors on that car this weekend. Be on the car a couple times throughout the rest of this season. And a good look there at that constant wheel motion that, Parker, you were talking about this racetrack produces.
Right, you're just right down into 3, guarding the right rear, trying to get the car down and rotate it to get back the throttle. He's gonna gain a little bit on the exit, get sideways a little bit.
Tractor still coming back the right direction, even with that bobble. Second for Creed. Good lap.
Great lap.
31.034 officially on the leaderboard.
That was pretty.
Got to be happy with that.
That was a pretty turn 3 and 4.
Best of the Ford bunch. Josh Williams, the 3rd car for Colleague Racing.
And I have to correct myself here. I was texted by someone when I said that A.J. Allmendinger hit a lot of cars last year, or 2 years ago. He didn't. It was only 1. He had that right rear damage, but he had some great aggressive restarts that helped me a lot. So I was referencing those more, but I got to correct myself. I may have overstepped on exactly how many cars he actually got into.
Those race fans out there always keep you honest.
Yeah, they're listening.
Yep. Josh Williams, his run is done, and he'll want a little more than that. Only 18 for the 11 car, 31.47.
Coming off top 10 last week.
That's right. Yeah,
run.
Good day for Josh. Jesse Love in the 2. Kind of talked about it with Carla a bit ago. Sort of made a decent day out of a day that was maybe not the most promising on paper early on. A little bobble there, it looked like, through 1 and 2, chasing it up the hill.
Right, but it works for him on exit. Just starting to lose a little bit there. Didn't quite have the momentum. On to the backstretch. It's a tidy 3 and 4 so far. See it working the wheel sideways on exit. Chases it all the way up. That's going to sap some of the speed from it.
10th for Love. Better than last year. Had to start at the back, as we've talked about, but drove to 3rd. Dean Thompson, another one. Really strong week last week for Dean in the Sam Hunt Racing 26. Career best finish of 5th. 3 top 10s in the last 7 races for this 26 team. So not a fluke last week. This group is starting to get it together.
He's been one of the surprises of this season. It's been awesome to see Sam Hunt Racing have the performance that they had. He did a great job up front on those restarts when he was up on the front row and in the top 5. It was really great to see him battling up front, not getting taken advantage of in any way, and I think it was a great experience for him.
15th for the 26 car, 31.39. First start here at Nashville for Dean in the Xfinity Series. Here's Sam Mayer. Heard from him a little bit ago as well. You see William Sawalich watching anxiously as these strong cars at the back of the qualifying effort await their chance.
This one for Sam, not quite the 1 and 2 they probably wanted there. He's going to choose to get right down the yellow line in 3 and 4. Looks steady on the exit, starts to gain a little bit back. It's going to be a good lap.
Displaces his Haas Factory teammate, Sheldon Creed, and Mayer goes to the 2nd spot. So both those cars really good right now. Kind of came out of nowhere. We were talking about the Joe Gibbs cars and the Junior Motorsports cars, and Haas boys said, don't forget about us. They're 2nd and 3rd right now.
And I think it just shows you how good a 1 and 2 William Sawalich had.
Yeah.
How much speed he had down the backstretch, how much he had to work with. 48 goes way wide here. Nick Sanchez has done a great job in qualifying this year in this 48 car.
Yeah, there's no doubt that he's been fast this year.
Yeah.
About every track they unload, he is a guy that you always have circled as one of the cars to beat, at least on outright pace.
Top 5. That was a good lap.
5th for Sanchez, 31-14. Another one coming off of a strong race last weekend at Charlotte. Finished 3rd. Has a 3rd place finish here in the trucks as well. Final handful of cars set to go. Here's Austin Hill, the RCR number 21. Top 10 finishes in all 4 starts for him here at Nashville.
Car's wiggling a little bit on exit there. But a really good 1 and 2. One of the closest we've seen in a while to what Williams-Wallace did down there. Starts to lose a little bit down the back. Did he get that back at 3 and 4?
It's close.
Yeah, might have just... Now he's able to get back to throttle. It's coming back a little bit.
Don't think he's going to get
enough
there, but it was close. 2nd for Austin Hill, just 800ths off of a really good lap from Williams-Wallace. 30.94 the time for Austin Hill. Here's Corey Day in the Hendrick Motorsports number 17. First of a big stretch of races for him in this car throughout the rest of the summer and into the fall.
Oh, we went way in. We talked about it. Yeah, it's so inviting. We've seen a couple drivers do it. For Corey, same thing. It entices you down to turn 1 that you can throw all the speed in there, but it's just not the case. It's a slower corner than it looks visually. I'm sure he'd love the chance to be able to redo that one and back it up a little bit like we saw from Taylor Gray.
19th for Corey Day.
All part of the learning process.
It is, absolutely.
Right there. You put that in the notebook. He'll understand this next time he's here that you can't quite throw as much speed. Although there's grip in these race cars, you gain a lot of the speed in an Xfinity car in the center of the corner, not so much on entry.
Concrete King, Justin Allgaier in the Hellman's number 7 this weekend. Pretty close. 1 and 2.
Yeah, and pretty close to what Austin Hill had done. Loses a little bit more down the backstretch. He had some serious entry speed into 3. End up pretty high on the exit.
Pretty solid run, though, for Allgaier. He'll come across the line in 4th, right in between the 2 Haas factory cars. 31.025 the time for Justin Allgaier. As we're down to our final qualifier, one more to get through for Williams-Wallace. Here's Connor Zilic in the Junior Motorsports 88.
He's been a lot of fun to watch in qualifying in the Xfinity Series this year. That Rockingham pole lap, this front row lap at Charlotte last week.
Ooh, he was way up there. He was up in the gray.
He went for it.
The tracker, unfortunately, does not like it.
Nope, it disagrees with that approach. Gaining a little bit back here in 3 and 4. Uses a lot of racetrack once again, just doesn't quite have the momentum.
He went for it, but we'll have to settle for the 10th spot for Connor Zilic, 31.22. But that young man on the left side of the screen, Williams-Wallace, the 18-year-old racer from Minnesota, his 2nd career pole in his Xfinity career, Carla.
Yeah, that's right. Congratulating his team. 2nd career pole. Obviously has to feel really good at a place like this.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, our Starkey GR Super was pretty good in practice and qualifying, so super happy to start the race up front where clean air is definitely going to matter today. And just got to get all the little things right and finally getting the ball rolling here.
Yeah, you mentioned the clean air and how important that's going to be. What'd you think of the track and just the surface here?
I mean, it wasn't too bad to start practice. I'm glad we were in the 2nd group to get some laps in on the rubber and, get to feel the resin. We were as fast as Xfinity Mobile. So I think it's going to be a pretty good day, but I don't know. I guess we'll have to see.
All right, thanks.
Well, hey, we talked about this being a second half of the season team. We're in the second half of the season, and they're kind of delivering on their promise here.
That's a really impressive lap by him, almost a tenth faster than second place, and a big confidence booster. As we said, the first portion of the season was tough, and some of not their own doing. Some places they did lack speed, but if they had the speed, something would happen and sort of take them out of the race. So this is massive because if you have the speed, you can work on everything else. And Jeff Bendering there, his crew chief, will tell you that. I know every one of these crew chiefs that's dealt with a young driver will say the hardest thing and the first thing we want is that driver to be fast. Go out and qualify and get a pole. Show us you can do it. We'll work on everything else. We'll clean that all up. I think this is a big moment for Williams-Wallace, and I think this is a car and a team that a lot of those competitors we mentioned that are on that playoff cut line are watching to see if they'd have a moment like this. It's probably come earlier than some of them expected, and that this could be a big turning point for this 18 team Williams-Wallace.
Let's go back down to Carla with the outside front row start.
Yeah, another front row start for Austin Hill. How'd you feel about your lap? Did you think it was good enough?
You know, I didn't know with our Bennett Chevrolet, we were good in practice, but we wasn't really good for the first 5 or 8 laps on our fire off. So we knew that we needed to find something for the fire off. I think that we have a good idea going into tonight. I just hope we don't have a reoccurrence like we did at Charlotte. We qualified really well, and then we went to the trunk like really fast, and was struggling really, really bad at Charlotte on our car there. So all in all, solid effort for everybody at RCR, ECR. I knew everybody was missing turn 1 really bad, so I wanted to make sure I didn't overdrive turn 1. But I feel like I probably gave up a little bit of entry speed into 1 and maybe just a touch into 3. Could have opened up my entry a little bit more, but all in all, solid effort. We're up front on the front row, and excited to race under the lights here in Nashville.
You mentioned during practice there was a lot of rubber being laid down. How do you feel like that's going to come into play tonight?
Yeah, I think it's definitely going to come into play. I don't know how much it's going to come into play compared to if it was a day race and it was going to be 90 degrees out. But I still think it is going to come into play. These Xfinity cars, we lay down a pretty good bit of rubber, and once you lay the rubber down, you start slipping and sliding, and you got to find a different lane. And that's one thing I really like about our 21 car right now is I could run the bottom, I could run 1 lane up, and I could run the very top chasing the gray and make speed doing it. So I'm excited for tonight.
A lot of options for the 21 going into the race, Dylan.
So we don't know exactly who's going to start on the inside or outside yet necessarily, but if you're Austin Hill and you're theoretically outside the front row, what kind of challenge is that for him to just, as tricky as turn 1 has been, to send it off down in there after the Cup cars will have been on the track for a couple hours too?
Well, we've seen the last couple of years, there's always an instant sometimes down to 1, especially with how hot and slick it was the last couple of years at this place. And that's to that reasoning. You don't know exactly what kind of grip level is down there when you get in this race, and there's not a lot of room for error down there, especially if that inside car, if they misjudge it. In the trucks yesterday, we saw lane rings get super loose and basically the bottom of the second row. So it's a definite, very tricky corner. But I'm curious about what he went into there, which happened last weekend, which they qualified so well, and then atypical for them, they took a hard push to the back. I didn't expect that. Usually when Austin Hill qualifies up front, that's a dangerous race car for the rest of the competitors out here because that means he's got a lot of speed.
We'll see how it all plays out a little bit later on this afternoon. William Sawalich on the pole for the first time this season. A lot of parity through the years here at Nashville. 8 different drivers have now won the last 8 poles here at Nashville, but one constant has been Joe Gibbs Racing. They've won 8 of the last 13, including 2 in a row now with William Sawalich picking up his 2nd career pole. See the first 5 rows of the lineup later on today. Ross Chastain in there on the inside of row number 5, and Connor Zilic starting in the 10th spot.
Look back here, Christian Eckes on the outside of row 6. I think that's a good starting point for them, trying to turn their season around. Jesse Love, I know he wasn't going to be happy with that lap, but it puts him in contention to at least get those all-important stage points he mentioned that Danny Stockman wants him to get, so they're close enough for that.
Second half of the field, Corey Day from inside of row number 11. Parker Retzloff back there with some work to do as well inside of row number 15, and Kyle Sieg just in front of him, who was fastest in practice earlier today. Taylor Gray as well there as we go up those rows, and row 12 going to be one car to watch starting 24th.
And our buddy Myatt Snyder back here in row 18. We know he's going to want to have a better run than that. Not probably super excited about that speed. And those who did not make the race, Katherine Legge and Glenn Ream. Katherine got super loose in turn 2 on her lap, and Glenn, very little experience. I thought he did a good job trying to get so close to get the field.
Let's go back down to Carla.
Yeah, here with Sam Mayer, who's going to be starting on the 2nd row. We were talking about before you rolled off for qualifying how good you are here, but obviously a pretty good run for you. You said you were maybe a little surprised it was that good.
Yeah, for sure. I knew that, like, the pace we showed in practice, like I said, wasn't as good as it probably was, but we kind of proved that in qualifying. So this Auto Bell Ford Mustang is really good. I'm really proud of these guys. They put together a really good piece, and I haven't had really a bad run here yet, so it feels good to kind of kick this one off with a bang. Hopefully our car stays as fast as XFINITY Mobile by the end of the day, and we'll have a shot at it.
Anything more that you can tell your team that you need ahead of this one?
Yeah, I mean, this track is going to change a buttload by the time we get to the race and even throughout the race. So we're going to have to stay on top of it, and I know that these guys are capable of doing that. They ran really well here last year, so just got to keep up with those guys.
All right, we'll let you go talk to your team now. I had to chase him down the parking lot, guys.
Great job running down there.
Yeah, good effort, good hustle.
Probably
down
pretty
there.
quick. He's young and fast.
It's so interesting when you look at some of these young guys in this Xfinity series. Sam Mayer has been around for a couple of years, but there's a list of guys that have not won yet this year that it's surprising to me. You look at Sam Mayer, as strong as he was at the start of this year, to have not won yet this year. A lot of these teams, I think, if they can put a full race together, they're going to reel them off here at a pretty good clip.
For sure. And I think, we were trending to have possibly more winners than there are spots in the playoffs for a while there. And then we had Allgaier going to run, Austin Hill. We've had some Cup drivers win some races, and that's sort of taken that away. But I think Sam Mayer definitely qualifying the top 3. He was one that, for the pre-race today, I was definitely going to talk about one to watch. He made me look smart. So thank you to Sam for doing that. But I think this is a big opportunity for him, that Haas factory team. He mentioned how fast those cars were in their other form at Stewart Haas Racing last year. I think this track just really suits the Fords. It suits the Fords engines in a lot of ways and the power band that you run in here. So this could be a big day for Sam Mayer to finally get in victory lane this year.
Real quick for Sawalich on the pole, what's he got to do today?
Be consistent, right? Keep it together. I think the for him and what they're trying to do, a solid day is all they're looking for. We don't need home runs. We need base hits right now, to use a baseball analogy. They're trying to build up the confidence of that young man and build up his experience level in these race cars. This helps a ton, but a really solid race. You have a great starting position that allows you to get great stage points here. There shouldn't be a lot of offset strategies unless there's some ill-timed cautions. If you have that track position early, you can keep that throughout the day, and that's a big deal for him and that team.
Joe Gibbs Racing paces the way in qualifying, but plenty of other stories throughout this morning in practice and